I would show Saving Private Ryan just for the first 45 minutes, but we need waiver and counseling because it's like the first 45 minutes of that movie is amazing and horrible and accurate. And we saw it in the theater when it came out, and I remember when the movie ended, there was like 20 of us in there, and like nobody moved. Like it was exhausting. Like it was an exhausting movie to watch, mainly because it was like one of the first ones. It was all handheld, so you're running with them and Saving Private Ryan.
What was wrong with the second half?
Nothing's wrong with it at all. But the storming the beach is how that movie opens. Yeah. It opens on deep. Well, it opens in a great job. The movie, the war part, opens on a landing craft heading to Normandy.
Yeah, my dad used to show me and Morgan that like one, I don't know, the first like 10 minutes or whatever, like every single day for multiple years. So it's kind of
It's tough, man. It is tough. All right.
That'd be so scary.
And
Getting on stage, all the people with machine guns.
as soon as the door goes down,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
all right.
Now, like that takes some work.
Over the time.
And they drown because all the weight is 30 or 40 pounds on your back, and they have to get it off with them or they drown. And water has yet to stop a bullet.
In water, it's actually like worse.
All right, because of concussion.
Yeah.
All right. World War II or World War I, Part 2. Depends on how you look at history. Okay. So yesterday in class, those of you who are with me, we talked about how Hitler, just poked and poked and poked and poked. And the stage was set that here's where you are. They've taken Austria and part of, and then all of Czechoslovakia and part of Germany / France, and they're knocking on Poland's door. That's kind of where the notes ended yesterday. And Poland's going to be like, Poland's not here, man. And it's not going to work. And then they're going to take Norway, and then they're going to take Belgium, and they're going to take France. All right. Back when French. Okay. So the Soviet Union is now the Soviet Union. And Germany signed a non-aggression pact, and you know how treaties go. And this is the way it looked, 1939, 1940. On the brink, the cusp, the dawn of World War II. The Soviet Union shocked the world by signing a non-aggression treaty. Germany wants this to avoid the same thing that plagued them in World War I, a war in two directions. The Soviets did it to not have to fight, so they can keep getting their house in order, to probably build up their military, to do what you need to do when you know the other guy signing the paper is Hitler. If Neville Chamberlain had signed this agreement with Soviet Union, no problem. Just go on about your business. There they are. Very nice. Out of your pocket. All right, promenade. Okay. Yes, wonder how long the honeymoon will last. Again, war makes strange bedfellows. That's sort of the talk. This was August 15th of 39. He signed this agreement. Now, I just wonder what paper this is from, and I find it interesting that Hitler's the man and Stalin's the female. Germany, Italy, Japan. All the blue are lands controlled by those people. We'll get to the lime green in a second. Germany formed the Axis powers along with Italy and Japan. All three countries desired aggressive expansion. Germany left the League of Nations. Japan flat up walked out of the League of Nations to announce their intention to be global. Italy got Mussolini, and once Il Duce took control, they too put the foot on the gas and try and gain a little more land. They try and get that one little tough nut Ethiopia. They kept saying no. Yeah.
What does Axis stand for? What does it mean?
The Axis powers. I'm sure it's a German translation that we butchered. It's just the Axis and the Allies. It's just, instead of the Central Powers, and it's just the Axis powers. I don't know. In the 20th century, it'd be the Axis of evil. But, I'm sorry, late 20th century, because that is 20th century before I get corrected by one of you. All right. Okay, Poland. In September 5th, actually, of 1939, I believe, Germany invaded Poland, Britain, and France, declared war on Germany. Belgium in World War I, Poland in World War II. Poor Poland. Poland's barely existed as its own thing. It's always been a part of something else. Mr. Washburn and I get in conversations about how you could argue Poland has never really existed. It's more like an idea. Germany invades Poland. Russia invades it. Russia takes part of it so they can have a buffer. There's Ukrainians right here. This is New Poland. Poor Poland. All right. U.S. neutral, though anti-Hitler, anti-Nazi, and they wanted Britain and France to win. You go, guys. Gotcha. And they agreed. This is the Lend-Lease Act. We still sold goods to people, but you had to come get it. Shipping wasn't included. It was cash and carry. You pay, you come get it, and we'll sell it. Stay out for my sake as well as your own. There's democracy telling you to stay out of Europe. Those guys just can't get along. They're not us. Stay out. Not to mention, it's 39 and we're still trying to. There's light at the end of the tunnel. That's not an oncoming train. Like the Depression is. Roosevelt's got us working. We talked about that a little bit a couple of days ago. This nation will remain a neutral nation, but I cannot ask that every American remain neutral and fought as well. FDR. And it's a funny thing, that kind of pragmatism, I don't know, Pearl Harbor or no Pearl Harbor, I just think that, it would seem that just made it easier for FDR to join, or for other people in Washington to join, or even the economic cynic who realizes that war will get us out of the Depression. Pearl Harbor made it easy to fight that neutrality. Winter of 39-40 saw a lull in the action, the phony war. Germany invades Poland, and then it just kind of stops because everybody's got to get their armies together. Remember, after World War I, there was demilitarization, and then there was the Depression. So now you've got to find the money, shift your production, and begin the process of creating your armies. Probably going to have to draft. Although I kind of think that in Germany, service was compulsory. Mandatory. Ninth, yeah.
Isn't it compulsory? Is it in there's somewhere
I know.
in the Southwest Asia?
I know. Israel.
Yes.
It's compulsory.
My cousin lives in Israel. He had to serve.
Yep. In Germany, it used to be if you served, well, college was free. Like everybody did 2 years, then you got to go to school. In 40, the Nazis took Denmark and Norway and the Netherlands and Belgium. Ooh, those four are hard. Okay. They all fought. They all put up resistance. So you can see Austria was 38. The Sudetenland and then Czechoslovakia was 38. Their part of Poland was 39, and that part. Part of Lithuania, 39. And then they're going to get Denmark, the Netherlands, the Belgians, and the Norwegians. Norway, I don't know. Why? Unless it's just sea lanes, unless it's just being able to control all the North Sea, then it would make sense.
So basically, they're just picking off all the weak countries.
Well, and they're also kind of fencing in here. Like they've got Italy to the south on their side. Switzerland's like, just give me your money. But yeah, they're just taking, getting there. Plus, he's also service practice in a way. How does this strategy work? Does this work well? What do we have to do? Yeah.
So in this time period, are the words German and Nazi interchangeable? Or is it like, have the Germans become Nazis?
No.
So like, then why are they use them interchangeable?
Well, because the party in power was the National Socialist Party. It was the Nazis. And it's what? And it's easier that way to hate them all if they're all one thing. You know, like it's easy. But no, I talked about it a little bit yesterday. Lots of Germans, 70% of them didn't vote for him ever. Then he's kind of worked his way in through the chancellery. And once certain things happen, he's able to manipulate the laws, and then it is what it is. But not everybody was a Nazi. And when the war breaks out, there are people in Germany who are like, whatever, it doesn't affect me. And it didn't for the longest time. All right. Oh, my goodness. Who's that right there? Oh, look, there's Hitler and Mussolini. Very nice. Gotta be. Okay, yeah.
Where's the French hat?
Oh, it does have the French hat. Very good. Using blitzkrieg tactics, lightning warfare. World War I, static. World War II, not static. Germany turned focus on France. Again, part of the reason going through Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands is one, they're on their way to France. Two, it goes around that Maginot Line that somebody had mentioned before about fixed fortifications in France. Three, it gives them time to practice. It also gives them time to keep building stuff. Yeah, Gia.
What is
Blitzkrieg, lightning war. It was all tanks up front, aircraft, all very mobile, very shock and awe.
And the
Yep.
troops coming afterwards got pulled down the bridge.
Yep.
Move fast.
Yep. And decisively. France surrendered in June of 1940. No, it worked. But remember, in these countries as well, you have like the ruling government or the government in charge is not necessarily firmly established. It's not necessarily have a groundwell of support. So you have people in France who would like to be socialists, who would like to be nationalists, would like to be this, that, and the other. So you have factions in a lot of these countries. Because you're going to see French loyal to the Nazis, the Vichy French who are loyal to the Nazis. And then you're going to see resistance French. So just because the official army stops fighting does not mean the French people stop fighting. Or the Polish people, or Norwegians, or Belgians, or whomever. There's always pockets of resistance. Meanwhile, the red. Planes were sent to soften up the enemy, destroy all the rail lines, communication centers, major rail links. This was done as German tanks were approaching. The planes withdrew, so the enemy didn't have time to recover. And then the tanks went in, and then the infantry went in. So it was staged, coordinated, take out the means of communication, take out, again, this goes back to that concept of total war that kind of began in World War I.
Why is Sweden weak, even though it's like in the middle of the control area?
Because they were neutral. They're neutral. Who cares? Norway is out in the North Atlantic and in the Baltic. It's strategically, I mean, to take Sweden would be great, but without these two people, then you still got to deal with British troops or those people there. By controlling the coast, with the exception of England, you now have free range to the Atlantic, and he's going to use it. Same thing in Ireland. Ireland didn't involve itself in World War II as a nation with an army or anything, because again, they're just now, it's 39, 40. They're 11 years into being an independent country. So they're trying to figure all that mess out. Okay. Nazi. France's fall shocked the world. Britain, the only country left to oppose Hitler. Remember, France, no, that's Spain. As a fascist ruler, they're not going to oppose Hitler. Italy's on their side. They're dealing with their own stuff. The Soviet Union, remember, they got a non-aggression pact. England is Europe's last hope. Yay, Neville Chamberlain. Oh, there's Hitler in Paris. He signed the treaty for the surrender of France in the same railway car that Germany signed, the Treaty of Versailles, as sort of a slap in the face to the French. Yes, Ben?
So are these nations like France who surrendered, are they under direct control?
Direct.
So what happens to their government?
Run away. They go hide. They leave the country and go places and hide and just wait for liberation. Yeah. Germans come walking in, marching in, down the Champs-Élysées, do the triomphe, irony. The iconic crying Frenchman, just like the iconic crying Polish woman in that other picture having to give the salute. The Blitz. All right. Good metal band name right there. Even got the metal kind of font. August 40, the Battle of Britain began as Hitler decided to attack Britain with an actual notion of conquering the island. And believe it or not, there is documented evidence that once that was secured, he was looking at us. That would have been great. Anyway, it was just air attacks over and over and over to remove the Royal Air Force to set up everything for an invasion of England. This is the first instance, as early as 1940, when hindsight being what it is, when you see one of the flaws in Hitler's rearmament of Germany. No, they developed no long-range bomber. They had medium-range bombers and fighters. They had no long-range carpet bombing, B-17, B-28, nothing like that. They developed no long-range bombers. And that, in the end, is one of the things that kind of does them in from a strategic standpoint, not from the total war. Because long-range bombers could have been really effective in Russia. To be able to go deep into Moscow and deep into the country would have been very, very effective. All right. Okay. This is the Lend-Lease program. The United States becomes the arsenal of democracy, doing what we do best, selling weapons to people. Then wondering why they're shooting at us. Okay. This is how much stuff was sold and bought by other places during this program. China, Australia, New Zealand, and India, $1.4 billion worth of stuff. Africa, the entire continent, Southwest Asia, and the Mediterranean area, 1.8 billion. Soviet Union almost by themselves. The United Kingdom over $5 billion in weapons.
So we sold them.
We sold to anybody. You just have to come get it. If you're neutral, that's not picking sides. Now notice, not Japan, not Germany, not Italy. So not really neutral this time. Remember, we got our hands slapped in World War I, and the Britain's like, dude, come on. Selling to them too? Now we're like, look, whoever wants it, come get it. See, I find it, I don't know, I also have to wonder if Hitler even contemplated the idea. Like, would Hitler allow himself to buy American stuff? And I'm going to say probably no. Same thing with Japan. No, we learned from you. Now we're going to use your technology against you. In 1941, the Atlantic Conference, FDR and Winston Churchill created an Atlantic Charter. So they're already thinking post-war. They're not waiting for the war to end and then go, okay, what do we do? They're like, okay, let's think about what we've done in the past. Let's think about how we want Europe to look and what Europe is going to need after a second all-encompassing conflict in 20 years' time. I mean, the continent of Europe is losing 2 generations of a workforce, more or less, in the span of 2 wars. If you want to know why the European Union exists, this is why. World War I, World War II.
What's their plan as if the Nazis kept all that land, you know?
Oh, that was never an option. Their plan was to defeat the Nazis. Remember, when you lose all your holdings. So defeat the Nazis, and all that land goes back. Then when you lose a war, you lose all your stuff. At least as far as I know, they could have had some multiple contingency plans. Okay, so suppose Germany, but I don't think you can go into this thinking, well, what if we lose? You know, if you're America and Britain, you can't go in thinking, what if we lose? The Atlantic Charter reaffirmed the Wilsonian notion of self-determination. No territorial changes after this war. So all the things that Germany possesses do not go to a country. No protectorates. They become independent entities. And there'll be a new League of Nations. Well, so new, it's no longer the League of Nations. But again, just tweak what we have. And then you realize that what we have doesn't work, and you get the Constitution. Never mind. Okay. The 8 principal points of the Charter were no territorial gains. Territorial adjustments must be in accord with the wishes of the peoples concerned. The people living have a say. All peoples had a right to self-determination. Trade barriers were to be lowered, and they'd have to be lowered. Post-World War II, you can't have tariffs if you want to get your economy. You just got to deal with it and start making stuff, selling stuff, and putting people to work. And just put them down and let's just start going. Global economic cooperation, work for a world free of want and fear, freedom of the seas. There was to be disarmament of aggressor nations and a post-war common disarmament. So everybody's supposed to ratchet it back a little bit after the war to make it less of an easy, option. I don't like you. I got troops. Can't be risk all the time. That's the term we should have. A risk term. For settlers like a tan. It's kind of risk. Conquer the world. You hope that you draw an Oceania card.
Yeah.
And you just build, and then go.
Why is this?
Because it's so difficult to attack.
Oh,
All right.
I thought.
Just sit there and just build armies. Yep.
I thought Russia was
No, it's impossible to defend, dude.
Oh,
It's like split up into 7 different.
Yeah. All right. In 1941, Russia was invaded. I'm sorry, the United Soviet Socialist Republic was invaded by Germany despite the agreement, because Hitler. Kind of like the whole Captain Jack Sparrow in the very first movie. You cheated. Pirate. You violated your policy agreement. Adolf. Okay. And there they go. Operation Barbarossa. Great name, I guess. And off they go. It's all going really, really well in the beginning, and then they're gonna go to Stalingrad. It's not gonna. No one lists. Again, you do not invade Russia. No one wins a land war in Russia, except who's the exception?
Mongols.
The Mongols. The Mongols are the exception.
well, they attacked from the back.
Doesn't matter. They still had to go all the way through it, and they held it. All right. Forgive me, comrade, but I seemed such a good opportunity. Stab in the back there. This isn't going to help Stalin his view of the West either. It's just it. Hitler assumed victory. The Soviet Army, U.S. aid through Lend-Lease, and a bitter winter undid initial German successes. And probably in that order. Remember, Russia bought stuff from the United States. The United States was willing to sell because all those weapons, morals and ethics aside, you're in a depression. If you're making armaments and planes and tanks and clothing and belts and whatever else you need for an army, your people are working. So from a purely pragmatic, fundamental sense, if you're the president, the more people you can get working, the better for your economy. The fine print of our president's talk last night, the infrastructure deal that, I'm always going to call him Mayor Pete, that Buttigieg wants to put in place as Secretary of Transportation, 1 is long overdue, 2, grossly necessary, and 3, will put people to work. And that's what you want. So We gave them aid. We sold them stuff. We didn't give them aid. We sold their customers. The troops themselves and the Russian winter stopped them cold, no pun intended. Okay. So the eastern foray into the Soviet Union is met, and they needed Stalingrad because down there in that part of Russia, Germany, Moscow, down here in the Caucasus, that's oil. And if you're a mechanized army, fuel's beneficial. The Pacific Theater, the far more brutal theater, the overlooked theater, because it's not, it's not Europe. It's weird. The United States broke secret Japanese codes, knew they were preparing a war with British Malaya or the Philippines as a logistical point of attack. All these little red arrows, all Japanese movements. Being imperialist, island hopping, again, they need resources too. This archipelago right here that is Japan is mainly rock. And not much else.
A lot.
Yeah, but I mean, farmland, they're vertical farmers, they make the most. Resources, they're not resource rich. So they need these areas to industrialize and to serve as buffer. Part of the reason for Manchuria was farmland. Air raid on Pearl Harbor, this is no drill. All ships present at Hawaii area, December 7, 1941. That's kind of cool. This is no drill. Where's the timestamp?
December 7th.
That's the date stamp. Where's the time? Because that would have been, had it been like 4 a.m, probably better than 11. Yeah.
What's it?
So was
That's just who received it.
the US kind of seems like they kind of snoop, I guess you would say, like because in World War One they intercepted the Zimmer until
Correct.
and now they're breaking like Japanese codes. Was the US just good at that?
Everybody tried to. There was the Enigma machine that the Germans had for sending codes, and we stole it and figured it out. We had, irony of ironies. What was our most secretive language of communication?
Like,
Navajo. Yeah, it was Native American. We use Native Americans because it's not part of any family tree. It's not part of any language. And I don't know what this is. So, listen, I know look, we just forget the last 200 years and come work for us. Can we just put that aside for a minute? But no, it was a race to break codes, and it was a race. There's the code break. There's a good movie about in Britain, the whole organization that was just worked on breaking codes. It was I think Cumberbatch is in that movie before he was, All right. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, hoping to destroy the U.S. fleet station there. What was the one target that wasn't there that they really wish had been there?
The
Aircraft carriers were not there.
They were like all around.
They were all on a drill or a mission, and they were out doing some sort of exercise. Yeah. That's fortuitous. Remember, it's right here too.
Didn't they also like a miss the important stuff like that?
Okay, they wanted the boats.
Yeah, but they didn't have like the fuel tank for their ferry though. So
Yeah.
after it stopped the work.
When I was a kid, the original Midway came out in theaters, and it was in Sensorround, and that was like the first attempt into like surround technology. Like it was all heavy bass and really, really cool. But another movie that came out before that was called Tora, and it was kind of from the Japanese side, and it ends with Pearl Harbor. And as a kid, as an American kid, with a Marine grandfather, the fact that the movie ends with us being, losing was odd. Like, I was like, wait, what? I was sad because I wasn't used to that. Like, they destroyed us. I'm like, well. But it ended with the Japanese admiral saying, I believe we've just awakened the sleeping giant. Like, we did this, but it's maybe one of those things where you're careful what you wish for. Yeah. So there's Pearl Harbor. It's the only way to say that word. It's the only way to say that word is harbor.
Harbor.
How about that?
Harbor. Go to Fenway Park, get a hot dog and Natty Light. You watch Noma, although he's not there anymore. Twomey and the Pats. I hate the Patriots. Anyway, didn't destroy and the strike against the American naval base climax a long series of mutually antagonistic acts. We put economic sanctions on Japan, which forced them to be more aggressive to get the stuff they needed. We knew what they were doing. We knew that the decisions we were making might end up with this being the course of action. But this is all trying to do something to affect somebody without actually firing shots. And then, unfortunately, he's here. We can begin. All right. All right. Yeah, why not? But you can say you gave it to me.
Oh,
I was fouled. Flagrant 2. All right. All right. German control, Japanese control. All right. What?
I mean,
Briefly, until we get.
they like,
Nah, more like attacked it. That's sort of like their sphere. The orange is more direct control. All right. U.S. wanted revenge against Japan, but adopted a get Germany first because they saw Hitler as a bigger threat. No. The other way. It's 90 degrees and I can't wear shorts. Thank you. All right. This is the only. Nah. You want battles, go read about them. Just watch the War Channel or the History Channel. All right. So let's go back to Europe. And America enters the European war in Africa because, why not? Britain proposed an invasion through North Africa and Italy to go through the soft underbelly. The Italian army might not be the best in the world, but the mountains are no joke. So they go through here. This is, Rommel, the Desert Fox, and Montgomery, and then we're introduced to Patton, my personal favorite, World War II general.
did you like the movie?
I love the movie. I like the way he. Warsaw. First Armored Division. He was a tank genius. Yeah. What? Who had a question?
What movie are you talking about?
Patton. George C. Scott won Best Oscar portraying Patton, and he had a Native American accept on his behalf. He didn't even go. All right. He's also in a movie called Dr. Strangelove, which is about the Cold War. Outstanding. All right. It is more of a farcical, satirical look at nuclear weapons, if there is such a thing. From 1942 to 1943, the North African campaign culminates with the German defeat at El Alamein in Egypt. That's sort of like the end of the road for the Germans in Africa. And with this more or less under Allied control, we can now begin the invasion of Sicily, and then the Salerno and Anzio, which is horrible. This was really, really tough going. Then up into France and places beyond. But the plan was to go this way because they felt fairly certain that Germany would really pay attention if they were coming across the English Channel. Before Alamein, we never had a victory. After Alamein, we never had a defeat. I get his point. And again, even that is almost like a three-front war because the African campaign is a whole different kind of fighting. It's a whole different part of your army. Germany's not large. France is roughly the size of Texas. Germany's slightly larger, but it's not America. And so I don't know. Yeah, leadership matters. In 1943, at the Casablanca Conference, FDR and Churchill I believe that's probably Charles de Gaulle, agreed on terms of unconditional surrender. That's the goal. Unconditional surrender. Not an armistice, not a deal. I lost, I surrender. Uncle, do you yield? That's what this is. Unconditional. You lose without condition. It's over. I'll stop fighting if you give me this. It's no. You surrender. Yes, it's World War II. In February of 43, the Soviets turned back the Germans to Stalingrad. About 2 million are killed in this battle alone. This was sort of like the coming of age of the Soviet army. This was the beginning of the end of the German army. I mean, that's a large number to absorb.
What is Stalingrad? Is that a city?
Yes. In South.
Named after Stalin?
Yes.
Didn't it turn into something else partially, right?
Well, no.
Like they're
St. Petersburg became Leningrad, and then now it's St. Petersburg again.
Didn't name it.
What about Stalingrad?
Volgograd.
Is it Volgograd?
Yeah.
Volga? Yeah,
After the river.
after the Volga. Did you know that, or did you look that up?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so we got Steel and Volgograd. Okay, yes.
When it says 2 million, is that 2 million total or 2 million German?
Probably total. Again, you can look up. You can look it up. Yeah, Russians lost lots of millions because they threw everybody out. Yeah.
Someone know, did they like? If they know about coming, they evacuate.
Unless you want the people to offer resistance, unless you have the people so bought into what you're fighting for that they stay and offer resistance.
The Soviets basically like fought Russia.
Yeah, it was in World War II. It was, and again, you see that in Secret Private Ryan through this house to house, block to block. Like they use the city as defense. They use the humans. Well, they use the civilians. Not quite as human shields, but as you have to be careful who you're shooting. After Stalingrad, the Soviets remained on the offensive the remainder of the war. They are going west from here on out, and it is now a straight-out race to Berlin. The Soviets from Russia, the Allies from Italy, and then eventually the coast of France. All right. Sicily fell. Mussolini was deposed and later executed in 43, and him and his wife were hung by piano wire in the city square so people could see him.
Why piano wire?
What?
Why piano?
Because it'll cut into them.
Oh, I thought it was like super weird.
No, piano wire is a more brutal way to hang somebody because it starts going through the neck while you're losing oxygen from.
No, that's not.
Yeah, and if you're a heavy dude, it's gonna pull that much faster. There you go. I still like the whole guillotine stories. Like if on the way down I got stuck.
Well, you would die.
No. Like, but sometimes it was so dull they had to drop it 3 times to go through somebody's neck.
They would kill them. Because I mean, like this.
Oh, they were just so used. All right.
Like it doesn't.
See, there they are. There they are, hanging right in the middle of the plaza in Rome. Very nice.
Why are they
It's
hanging
all-
on the tree?
Like they're game, like a trophy. The Tehran Conference, the big three, FDR, Churchill, and Stalin agreed that allies would launch simultaneous offensives. Russia had been calling for this for the entire war. Russia had been calling for Britain and the United States to land in France and push east. And again, politically, you're thinking about this. Sure, we will. And America and Britain were, and they do. But if you're also adversarial with the Soviet Union, just let them fight it on their own a little bit, lose some army and and then we'll go in. Yes,
I
Kim.
was gonna say, at this point, they decided to like it's like Hitler and communism, and at this point, there's like bigger people.
Yes, that is why we are fighting with the Soviet Union, because Hitler must be stopped. We'll deal with you later. In fact, when the war ended, Patton was like, let's go. Let's go to Russia. Our army's here. Let's go. Take them out. and then they relieved him of command. But because he wanted to go attack Russia. He's like, our army's right here. We're all here. We can take that threat out next.
Why no?
Because wars are expensive and millions of people died, and we're not Europeans and haven't sat through all of that in 25 years.
Do you think it would have been a good idea?
No, don't invade Russia. I mean, unless, with the long-range bomber, probably different, because we could take out manufacturing and rail lines. But it would have been just as costly of us trying to invade Japan, because they'd have fought to the last man. All right, we'll get to that. All right. The USSR launched successful counteroffensive, driving the Germans back across Eastern Europe. A lot of those arrows are going in one direction, folks. 43, 44, summer 44, late 44, winter 45. There you go. Spring 45. I see a trend. Yes, Gia.
It's not actually it is, but I was like, what defines a war? You know what I'm saying? Like which one nation?
No, it's the one who stops fighting first and signs paperwork saying we lost.
Oh, really?
Yep.
It's like they like contracted.
Yes.
Oh.
That's what those treaties are. Here, the war's over. We lost. We're responsible.
That's what it's also declaration.
That's right. You actually have to declare war. You sign a formal piece of paper saying we plan on going to war against this country.
Oh.
It's all formal and legal. That's why the Korean War has never ended.
Because it was ended.
We've only had an armistice. We've only had an agreement to stop shooting one another. No formal treaty has ever been signed ending the Korean War.
And when you're in the military, don't you get like one of those little packets saying that you fought in the, like you served during the time of the Korean War?
Yeah. No, you have to, no. Like I had a Gulf War one. I had the first Gulf War ribbon because I was in during the first Gulf War, but I don't get an Afghanistan ribbon. You have to be stationed or sent, deployed to get the ribbon, not just in.
But if you just go to Korea, even if you don't fight, you do get it.
There's some sort of ribbon you'll get. Yeah, if you're stationed in Korea. All right.
South Korea.
You can't be stationed in North Korea. All right. And, well, I'm sure that there are Americans in North Korea. All right. Unbeknownst. June of 44, the Allies captured Rome, despite hard-fought efforts by the Italians to protect their peninsula and to protect their country, and help from the Germans. Rome falls. That's great. Okay, up we go. Okay, here we go. The big push. Though very difficult, the Italian campaign opened up Europe by diverting some of Hitler's soldiers from France. So all of this drew, because remember, they lost tons here. They're going to come back this way, but it's going to draw part of that force here. And in fact, they used Patton as a decoy. They made fake tanks and fake boats and took pictures of and left them out for the Germans to take photographs of in England. They allowed them to steal a message saying that Patton was going to lead an invasion force from down here, and the Germans respected and feared Patton. His nickname was Blood and Guts because he didn't care how many American soldiers he lost; he was going to defeat you. Well, when you're a general, but he also was. He was not a way behind the lines general. He was, in a way, a throwback to like Civil War generals when he's with them in the tank and going. So, but his tactics were good. He was very decisive. Yes.
What purpose did Switzerland serve?
Banking.
They gave money to everyone or just for-
No. Anybody could put their money there for safekeeping. Well, it's not their money. They're just holding it. Just bank. All right. But yeah, a lot of Nazi money, a lot of Nazi gold was there. A lot of stuff taken from Jews went there. All right. So there's Europe at the end 45. Piccadilly Circus. Here's the invasion. Piccadilly Circus. Well, actually it's a place in London where all the clubs are. I highly recommend it. 21. That was the rallying point, and then off he went. Right about here is where Saving Private Ryan begins. And then they land, and then it's just 25, 30 minutes of carnage. It's so well done and just awful. So this second front for the Germans opens up. A lot of paratroopers. James Ryan was a paratrooper. Gets lost. Bless you. Yes.
What's that one? What's the flag with England and Britain's flag?
Australia. And the Commonwealth countries. Canada sent a lot of troops on D-Day. Ooh, there they are.
Like one beat.
This is not day one. This photograph is not taken day one.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff on the beach looks like
It's already been cleared away. Yeah. But that was what it looked like. And you're walking and it's wet and it's cold. Well, it's not cold, it's June, but that stuff is heavy.
War photographers, like their only job is.
Yes, there were some of the most famous directors. There's it's on either Disney or Netflix. It's about 4 or 5 came back. And it's about Hollywood directors who went from like the 40s who went and filmed the war as photographers and then came back. Like John Ford and a bunch of other ones who are famous directors went. But yes, you could be, there's a journalism rank in the military. You could be a photographer. You have to be able to carry a weapon.
And they have military training.
Yeah. But yeah, you're a photographer.
there's a ton of stuff that there's even a band.
There is a band. It's very difficult to get into. But it's a great gig. You stay in the United States and you can play important venues and all right. Anyway, that's the beach, all tricked out. That's like not opening day. All right.
That's like way after.
Yeah. Allies meet heavy resistance on D-Day, but with help from the French underground, Paris is freed in August of 44. Vive de Gaulle, long live de Gaulle. There they come marching back into Paris. Everybody loved us in 44.
Wait, what's the
Back to that.
It's being recorded. You can go back. Bullet point.
You don't have to write the whole thing.
Yeah, all right. Okay. December 44, the Battle of the Bulge. That was Hitler's last ditch offensive. Their one last chance. He almost succeeded. He almost took out this group in the Ardennes forest in the winter.
Wasn't that forest?
Yes. And they would actually shoot the tops of trees. And the trees would fall and splinter and land up.
That's like the artillery.
Yep.
It's just like an open track.
Yep. There it is, the last ditch push. This bulge of air, that's why it's called. This is one big bulge in German land. It fails. Patton and the others come and race to the rescue, so to speak, and it ends it. And it's pretty much the beginning of the end. Yes, sir.
If he won that, wouldn't have really mattered for it.
It would have dragged it on, and then who knows? Because they were. I mean, knowing what we know, I don't know how industrially they could have kept it going. Like I don't know how they could have continued to build a war machine. Our ability to produce because our country's not being bombed. I mean, you can't undervalue the Atlantic Ocean being a buffer. You know, we don't join the rest of the world until September 11th. So they could not have outproduced us, and they couldn't have outproduced. I mean, Russia's now right down their throats too, coming from the other direction.
And this is like when you're desperate.
Yeah, I mean, every 13-year-old boys and 60-year-old men and whoever else can carry a gun. Yeah. By the time they get to Berlin, fight to the last man. I'll just be down here in the bunker.
And they still never used women.
They fought. Russians.
There was an air force, like air, like a full, I don't know
Yeah.
what it's called, like full of women.
Well, there's the WWIIs and the WAIs in the United States military. The Russian women fought, they carried weapons, and they fought.
I was just saying, like, a country got desperate.
Yes, if they got desperate enough, if you can carry a weapon, carry a weapon. February 45, the big three meet at Yalta. By this point in time, Roosevelt is in very poor health. Polio. Churchill, Stalin, and they're there. Victory remains certain. They're talking about how they're going to reorganize Europe. I'm sure now that the war is beginning to wind down, ideological tensions are going to reemerge. It just makes sense. I just have a hunch that Stalin's not that kind of man. And I think that if I give him everything I possibly can and ask for nothing from him in return, he won't try to annex anything. And will work with me to bring democracy and peace. Interesting. It's all right. I will say this. I'd rather have a president with that outlook than the other. But that's just me. You don't have to agree with me. That's just me. All right. I'm getting spammed by McAfee.
Saying.
The virus, like it says my subscription's up. This is a school computer. I don't have it, but it comes up all the time. All right. March 45, troops reach the border of Germany, join the Soviet Union as they march towards Berlin. Hitler is aware of this, and Hitler is hoping and hoping and hoping. I'm sorry. Hitler is hoping and hoping and hoping that the Americans, the Allies, get there first. Because if the Allies get there, they'll arrest him. The Russians get there, they'll Mussolini him. They will. They'll torture, kill him, chop him into bits. They'll make him pay for all the stuff he did to their people.
Didn't the Allies get there?
Russia got there first, and so he killed himself. Russia got to Berlin first. They are technically allies. Russian allies got to Berlin first. Allies launched massive aerial strikes on German cities. Yes, we did. In the whole total war, one of the worst things we ever did was firebomb the city of Dresden.
Wasn't like the entire city on fire?
Yeah, just because it needs all that oxygen, so the fire just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It sucked all the oxygen out of it. Yeah.
Did they, at this point, did most of them like villainize all Germans?
This is like when we started fighting concentration.
This is when we start finding concentration camps and when we started making German civilians walk through them. Because there's conflicting stories, and I don't know if we'll ever get a definitive answer that there were Germans who had no idea this was going on, and there quite possibly could have been Germans who had no idea this was going on. But to excuse all except those in the party, no. But that's why the Americans made them all walk through the camp. They would, if there was a camp in a town, they made all the town citizens walk through the camp. There, that's Dresden.
Holy, not anymore.
It is. It's rebuilt. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it like a full looking city before?
It was just an old European city, predominantly wood. If you think about it, it was built. It's old, so it's a pre-1940 city. You think about your Charles Dickens view of Europe, and the buildings are close together, and up it went. They were incendiary bombs. Again, the purpose of this is to make the people not want this to go on anymore. If you can defeat the army, great. But if you can get the people to not want to take part in this, they'll pressure the government. We did it in World War I. Like I said before, Sherman did it in the Civil War. Yes.
Did they kill anyone?
Yeah.
Civilians?
Yeah. All the houses. Yeah. They firebombed the city.
The city was occupied.
It's okay. Literally speaking, it's a war crime.
Yeah.
Literally speaking, that's a war crime. That's a violation of Geneva Convention.
After Vietnam.
Yes. You also have to remember too that technically speaking, the term genocide does not exist yet. That's a 1950s word by a Duke professor. Oh, those are the victims from Dresden. Some of them. Yes. Oh.
Is that smoke?
Then we did it. Yeah, it's smoke coming out of the body. Yeah. Not really anything funny about it. Then here's Cologne, or Köln, K-O-L-N in Germany. That's how they say it. It's Cologne. Did it there too.
What's that big?
Nuremberg. Where? That's a cathedral. Remember, churches are always the biggest thing in town.
Why is it not?
It's a church.
Big-
It's a church. No.
okay.
Let's draw the moral line somewhere. Okay. All right.
You can't really aim the bone.
Well, you can't aim them, but you kind of know gravity and whatever momentum. Nuremberg and more bodies. Upon entering Germany, Allies saw atrocities of the Holocaust as concentration camps become liberated. The anti-Holocaust people say that never happened. One argument is it never happened. Because where are the bodies? That's an argument.
They were burned.
That's a Holocaust denier's argument. There's no bodies. They kind of a point.
Some of them were literally still vampires. Like they-
I know. I'm just saying. That's just. I'm not saying. I'm just throwing it out there. All right.
So like.
Yes.
It's Cold War.
Yeah.
They're not doing the Holocaust. So, this point.
Americans aren't going to know this until people with cameras start sending it back, and it makes the newsreel before your Saturday matinee. That's how you got your news in the 40s. Was in the movies. Yeah,
So
and the radio.
if the argument is that there's no body, how are we to know that, or how did we arrive at the conclusion that they were killing people? Is it from the survivors?
Logs, survivors.
They're still bodies.
Yeah, I mean they found other bodies, and if you and for forensics being what it is, you could probably go back and do an analysis of the ash.
You can actually.
Yeah. You all right?
I'm just doing positive.
You're laughing. Okay. April 30th, 45. Hitler commits suicide, knowing the end is near. See, there he is. These are the men. These are the boys left to defend Berlin.
That's the last picture of him.
Alive, and his hand is shaking. I think there were like 11 attempts on his life by his own people during the war.
Yeah, one of them was in the room with that guy with the bomb.
Yeah, no, Valkyrie. But 11 times they tried to kill him. Imagine how that plays on you as far as supposed to be here. This is supposed to happen. I mean, huh? Yeah. Oh shit. If you want something done, do it yourself. Okay. May 2nd, 45, Italy surrenders. That's nice. May 7th, 1945 is VE Day for victory in Europe. Germany surrendered unconditionally. May 7th, 1945. The people. By the time this happens, Americans are like, all right, can we just end this? Because lots of these guys hopped on planes and boats, went to the Pacific. There are some dual theater veterans out there, although there's not many World War II veterans alive. I mean, more than you would think, but not that number eventually. I mean, I keep forgetting that war is almost 80 years old. It is 80 years old.
There's no World War I veterans left.
We'd be
No,
like,
the last World War I veteran just died this year. I think, the last.
Oh.
Yeah, just died. All right. Despite some Japanese successes in the months after Pearl Harbor, the United States was able to turn the tide in the war in the Pacific Theater. Okay. True. This makes it seem a lot easier than it was. Because it was island hopping, it was bush, it was jungles, it was fighting to the last man. They were fed that Americans were cannibals and they would eat them, so they jumped off cliffs and killed themselves rather than be taken by Americans. And this goes back to the Meiji Restoration, the whole industrialization thing, and then all that. Remember, we'll learn how they do things, and then we'll go to war with them. Prophetic.
Didn't they find find like some Japanese like army people from like 30 years later still like thinking that.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the bush, yeah, 'cause they have no idea what's going on. Americans too, yeah.
Was part of the jumping off cliffs and committing suicide, was that part of like just the Japanese culture of like
These were islanders, Pacific Islanders, who were just
okay.
told, look, it's better to do this than to be taken by the Americans. Yeah. Whole families, children.
And the Japanese people that told them were still like so basic that around like the feudalism, like modern society.
Maybe. Japan took Guam, Wake Island, the Philippines, Hong Kong, British Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, and they pushed into China. And we know this because they went to Nanking. The rape of Nanking, they killed 200,000 civilians, raped the women, pregnant women, took the babies out, killed the babies, then the women, yeah. This is the Japanese Empire in 42. Again, resources, fueling stations, buffers between the allies. In the Philippines, Japanese soldiers forced American and Philippine soldiers on the Bataan Death March. This is a march from the battles to a camp. 12,000 people died on this march to the Bataan death camps. Japanese were brutal toward their prisoners.
You gotta think that it was
Yes. But yet they had camp. I love Empire of the Sun. I love that movie.
You should, is it on?
Probably. There's one. Yeah, it does. Just because you do it doesn't mean that the dad of me is going to want to show my children these movies.
It's PG.
It's PG.
Okay.
Empire of the Sun. Let's
Okay.
go.
Yeah, and because Ferris Bueller is PG too, and there's no way that's a PG movie today. There's no way Ferris Bueller or The Breakfast Club are PG movies today. All right.
Have you seen the movie Why?
I own that movie. All right. Yes. So there. What?
Well, it doesn't have a lot of customers, but it does have customers.
So
That's why.
Yeah. I'm 13. So this is the march down to Corregidor. That's the Bataan Death March. Okay, they were beaten, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Japanese expansion finally checked in the Coral Sea and Midway Islands. That was it. Those two victories. This was the first battle in war, in the history of war, where the two sides never saw each other. No, it was all airplanes and ships. Like, they never saw each other. They just sent planes and bombed people. Like, it wasn't a face-to-face. Midway, they were a little closer than that. But this one was the first time the combatants were not even near one another.
So in Midway, you can see the other.
Well, it wouldn't be the first one because this was first. This was May, that was June. So, whoops. All right.
wait,
Yeah.
wasn't it finally checked?
Like, it was checked. You know, like check, taking the ball in, check, make sure you just check it. Stop it. That's what it means. Yeah. Or like in chess. Find a new show. Shadow and Bones.
Oh, we have to do the book series.
It's a book series?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I gotta read that. I'm totally digging. I watched. Okay, because like, is it two books or is it one book because they're smashed together? All right.
One is six of the shadow.
Okay.
Didn't that show just come out on Netflix?
Yes, I almost stayed up all night.
What's it about?
Hold on. Target Tokyo, there's the goal. We begin island hopping, bypassing fortified islands and hopping on the little ones, working our way to Japan. That's the goal. Those little islands offer just as much resistance as the big islands because the Japanese had, I have the high ground. It's over.
It's more of the
Well, they're in the mountains. They're dug in the caves. And a lesson we should have paid attention to when we went to Vietnam. But, you know, this is America. All right. I'm always going to be me. Sorry. We won in Guadalcanal. We prevented the Japanese from expanding down into Oceania. So this checked their progress going towards Australia and New Zealand. My grandfather fought there. I have his the brown of his hat and medals and things.
What year was that?
42. We took Tarawa, Makin, and the Gilbert Islands, and the Marshall Islands in 44. Look, stopping them from going to Oceania is important. We're just hopping islands to Japan. Okay? You need to know these little island names if you want to. If you're a war buff, have at it. Understand that we stopped their forward progress with Midway and the Coral Sea. We stopped them from going into Australia and New Zealand because then there'd be no hobbit. And now we're just hopping our way to Japan. Taking the battle to them. All right. Oh, I'm recording tonight. We took Tarawa. Okay, we did that. Very bloody. Very 31. Still 3,100 miles to Tokyo. Spelled incorrectly. To Frisco. What the hell do you care? You're not going there. Okay, so there you go. Because you're not leaving anytime soon. All right. San Francisco.
Okay.
San Fran, Tokyo. There's the Mariana Islands. Won the Battle of Philippine Sea. Wow. All right. Wow. Okay. World War II had many more questions, so I will finish this and do the Cold War tonight. Bye, Mary. Tomorrow, no notes. Be here early. We're going to do a DBQ workshop to help out with DBQs. Stop moving around, talking. And then I'm going to explain to you how we're going to grade the test tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry it took so long. I didn't realize that. World War II had a lot of questions. See everybody tomorrow.